You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like absolute precision.
Right. It's very binary.
Yeah, it's almost like engineering, you know?
Yeah.
You fall, you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background, and the doctor just points at it and says, yep, there it is.
Broken or not broken, the evidence is it's clean, indisputable.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of human emotion. You start looking at, well, baseline anxiety, at our deep psychological wiring, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Well, completely.
The landscape just goes from this stark black and white to, I mean, incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. When it comes to, the baseline hum of human anxiety, we aren't just looking for a broken bone. We're trying to measure the water we're all swimming in.
And that murky water is exactly what we are pulling from the stack for today's deep dive. We're looking at a fascinating audio excerpt. It's referred to as 25.mp3, and it outlines this framework, claiming that the anxiety you feel every day isn't just in your head.
Right, goes way deeper.
Yeah, it claims it's baked right into your genetic code. It's a dive into something the text calls the 25th gene key. But before we go any further, I really need an ELI 5 breakdown here.
Sure, Hemi.
When this framework talks about a gene key, are we talking about a literal sequence of human DNA, like something I could look at under a microscope? Or is this more of a spiritual metaphor for human behavior?
That is actually the perfect question to start with. You should really look at this framework as a profound philosophical lens rather than, a peer-reviewed biology paper.
Okay, got it.
It uses the language of genetics and cellular biology as a metaphor to map out human consciousness. It argues that our psychological states, like our deepest fears and our highest capacities for love, are essentially coded into us.
Like dormant potentials waiting to be unlocked.
Exactly. So whether you view this as literal biology or just a highly effective psychological metaphor, the goal is the same. It's about understanding how we process stress and connection.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So our mission today is to use this lens to understand where our chronic anxiety actually comes from, how we can practically alchemize it into true acceptance, and what this framework suggests about the ultimate evolutionary destination for humanity.
Which it calls a state of universal love.
Right. So if you, listening right now, have ever wanted to get to the bottom of why we all feel so relentlessly stressed out without getting bogged down in like 1,000 different self-help theories, you are in the right place.
And the approach here is incredibly grounded. We are going to connect these profound, somewhat esoteric concepts directly to your daily physical experience.
So no abstract philosophy about reaching enlightenment on a mountaintop.
No, not at all. We are talking about the physical reality of how your nervous system reacts to traffic, how you breathe and how you exist in your body every single day.
Okay, let's unpack this. The argument here begins with a pretty bold premise. It suggests that to understand how we ever reach a state of universal love, we first have to confront the baseline problem that every single human being shares. And the source material calls this the sacred wound.
The sacred wound. It's a very evocative phrase, isn't it?
It really is.
In this framework, it refers to a germ of suffering that every human brings into the world. It manifests as what they call the shadow of constriction.
Yeah.
Specifically, the dilemma of anxiety.
But here's the detail that really caught my attention and made me rethink things. According to this philosophy, anxiety isn't something you learn.
Right.
It's not caused by a bad day at work or watching the news or even a traumatic childhood event, though obviously, those things can trigger it or make it worse.
Sure, they exacerbate it.
But the argument is that anxiety is innate. It's cellular. It's just sitting there inside you from day one as a dormant code, just, biding its time.
Which perfectly explains a really fascinating observation this speaker makes about very young children. If you look at a toddler, say under 3 years old, you don't really see this sacred wound in action.
Right, they just run around completely carefree.
Exactly. They appear completely unconstricted. They seem to have absolutely zero existential anxiety.
Wait, so I wasn't traumatized into being an anxious adult. It's just my factory settings?
You could say that, yeah.
If that's true, what changes? How does the dormant code actually activate?
Well, it awakens the moment a child develops a sense of their own mortality, which coincides with their sense of separateness. This framework connects innate anxiety directly to the development of what psychologists would call the ego.
Oh, interesting.
When a young child doesn't yet understand what death is, they don't feel separate from the universe. But as that sense of individual identity solidifies, the vibration of fear begins to tremble inside them.
Because they realize they're a fragile, separate thing.
Precisely. And that realization creates a physiological constriction tied directly to our breathing and our nervous system.
Okay, but wait. If my mind is what's causing the worry, right? If this newly developed sense of I and my thoughts are generating this anxiety, why can't my mind just solve it?
Ah, that's the catch.
Because the text explicitly warns that mental knowledge or traditional psychoanalysis is not enough to fix this. And I'll admit, that feels highly counterintuitive to me. If I thought myself into a panic, shouldn't I be able to think myself out of it?
It's a completely natural assumption. But think about the nature of a physical constriction. The argument here is that because this anxiety has dropped down into a cellular physical vibration, you cannot simply use logic to force it away.
The mind is just the wrong tool for the job.
Right. The mind is a brilliant tool, but you cannot psychoanalyze a tense muscle into relaxing.
Oh, wow. It's almost like, okay, innate anxiety is like a hidden background app running on your smartphone. It's just sitting there, quietly draining your battery all day long.
Yes. Great analogy.
You can't just swipe it away on the home screen with logic. You can't delete it by having a clever conversation with a therapist about your battery life. That doesn't work. You actually have to go deep into the fundamental settings of the physical body to force quit the process.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And what's fascinating here is how it contrasts our human experience with the animal kingdom. Animals feel fear, absolutely. A gazelle feels intense fear when chased by a lion.
Sure, survival instinct.
But animals don't experience chronic anxiety because they lack that developed sense of I. They don't lie awake at night worrying about the retirement fund or what the other gazelles think
Okay,
of.
they just go back to eating grass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet, this text suggests that this very anxiety, this deeply uncomfortable background app, is also the exact catalyst that inspires the human quest for higher knowledge. The discomfort is what forces us to evolve.
Which brings us to a really harsh truth, but I guess a necessary one. The speaker quotes the philosopher Gurdjieff, who famously said, first of all, realize you're in prison.
Or as the Buddha put it, all life is suffering.
Right. And the point they're making is that the very first step to any kind of transformation is dropping the denial. You have to admit the background app is running. You have to acknowledge the reality of this physical and mental constriction.
Exactly. You have to make direct contact with that vibration. And the text points out that our breath is the primary physical mechanism for doing this. In fact, it drops a staggering statistic. The average person takes roughly 17,000 breaths every single day.
17,000. That is a massive number.
It is. And how many of those 17,000 breaths are you actually consciously aware of?
Maybe one.
Right. Maybe a few when you're working out. For the vast majority of people, it's practically zero. We are on total autopilot.
That is wild. So if the mind is entirely unequipped to logic its way out of this 17,000 breath a day background anxiety, what's the game plan? Well, the text transitions into what it calls the 25th gift of acceptance.
The practical roadmap.
Yeah, it breaks us down into a highly practical, non-mental, three-step antidote to bypass the analytical mind entirely. The steps are allow, accept, and embrace. Let's really break these down.
Let's do it. The first step is allow, and this is purely physical. It is about bringing your awareness entirely out of your thoughts and into your physical sensations.
Out of the mind into the body.
Yes. And crucially, the framework stresses that allowing doesn't mean you have to like the feeling.
Right, you're not gaslighting yourself into thinking panic feels good. You're just, I guess, creating a wider container for it. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, you begin with the body, because the body is uncomplicated compared to the labyrinth of the mind. You just let the breath happen. You feel the physical discomfort in your chest or your stomach.
So no trying to fix it right away.
Exactly. The text even suggests doing physical rhythmic things like running, chopping wood, or working with your hands on a craft.
Wait, so mechanically speaking, how does knitting a sweater or going for a jog actually stop the anxiety?
It's about bandwidth, really, and nervous system regulation. Repetitive, rhythmic actions pull your conscious awareness away from the rumination engine of the brain. You're giving your nervous system a physical anchor. By forcing the body into a steady rhythm, you naturally encourage the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, to kick in. And that slowly starts to lower the cortisol levels the mind was pumping out.
Okay, so allow is the physical grounding. Step 2 is accept, and this moves into the emotional realm. Once you've anchored yourself physically and that frantic breathing has settled a bit, you can start making contact with the actual feelings.
Without being completely overwhelmed by them.
Right. The text notes something really important here. Emotions are essentially just chemical cascades in the body. Once that initial spike of chemistry levels out and becomes bearable, you naturally start feeling some space open up around the fear. You reconnect with your heart, which brings a natural sense of hope.
And then comes the final step. Embrace, which is the mental aspect.
Notice that the mind is the very last thing to be addressed here.
Yes, this is where the mind finally yields. The text offers this brilliant metaphor for the mind when the body is filled with anxiety. It compares the analytical mind to a mad factory manager.
I really love that image.
Right. He's sprinting around a power plant, frantically trying to keep all the machines from overheating.
The manager is just throwing levers, totally panicked, yelling at the workers, convinced that if he stops worrying for even 1 second, the whole factory will explode. And the levers he's throwing are our overthinking, our pacing the room, our obsessive planning.
Precisely. But in the embrace stage, because you've allowed the physical sensation and accepted the emotional chemistry, your deep breathing finally falls all the way down into the belly.
The physical emergency is over.
Exactly. So the mad factory manager finally looks around, realizes the machines aren't actually on fire, throws his hands up, and surrenders. The heart opens, the mind stops trying to control the uncontrollable, and you ignite your own transformation.
Now, I want to pause here because this framework makes a really crucial distinction that I want to make sure you, the listener, fully grasp. There is a massive, life-altering difference between true acceptance and mere resignation.
Yes, very important.
And the text warns that a lot of people make the tragic mistake of confusing the two.
They do. Resignation is described here as yielding to the shadow. Physically, it's a dropping of the head, a collapsing of the chest, a caving in. It is a complete loss of hope.
Wow.
People who resign to their anxiety fundamentally believe things can never get better. They become victims to the background app.
It sounds like resignation is letting yourself sink to the very bottom of a freezing ocean. You just give up to the crushing weight of the water. Whereas true acceptance is actively treading water and saying, yes, the water is absolutely freezing and I don't like it, but I'm still floating.
I like that.
You're acknowledging the harsh reality of the environment without letting it drown you.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The text describes true acceptance as being done with your head held high. It takes a deep breath of courage. There's almost a kind of healthy defiance to it.
Like staring it down.
Exactly. You look directly at the shadow of constriction and say, I see you, I feel you in my chest, but I do not have to believe in your narrative. Acceptance essentially straddles the space between the reality of constriction and the possibility of love. Resignation just surrenders unconditionally to the constriction.
So if this 3-step process, allow, accept, embrace, is so incredibly liberating, if it actually works, why do we resist it so much? Why is our default setting as humans to run away from our feelings?
Well, the text explores how our modern world and our deep-seated fear of suffering actually blocks us from experiencing genuine joy.
And to illustrate this, the speaker shares this incredible anecdote about living in Maui, Hawaii.
The Maui paradox. It is a fascinating observation about human nature. The speaker describes Maui as an absolute paradise. It's soft, yielding, heaven on earth, a place where you can literally walk naked into the forest and step on ripe, fallen mangoes.
Sounds amazing.
Right. The climate is perfect. There are no nasty predators. It is an environment of pure, unadulterated comfort.
But then the speaker goes to a few local parties and notices people taking heavy recreational drugs, marijuana, ecstasy, things like that, just to escape. And the speaker makes a really sharp point. I have nothing against those things, but if there is one place on Earth you do not need them, it's Maui.
Right. Why would you numb yourself in paradise?
Exactly.
The underlying takeaway here is profound, and it cuts right to the core of why we avoid acceptance. It is incredibly hard for us to let the overwhelming beauty of the world in, unless we have first accepted the suffering that lives inside us.
So the contrast is just too much.
Yes. If you have a chaotic, unaccepted storm of anxiety inside you, a peaceful, beautiful external environment will actually feel deeply uncomfortable. The contrast is too sharp.
The text argues that our modern conveniences, our technology, have actually made us tame and docile. We've engineered all the natural pauses and discomforts out of our day. Which makes me wonder, are we using our devices, our endless scrolling, the exact same way those people in Maui used ecstasy?
That's a great question.
Are our phones just a daily buffer to prevent us from feeling anything too deeply, whether that's deep emotional pain or deep awe-inspiring beauty.
If we connect this to the bigger philosophical picture the text is painting, it explains why what they call the contemplated life is so vital. We have built a highly addictive, constricted societal mindset. To break out of it, we have to endure the discomfort of pausing.
Which isn't easy.
No, not at all. The text references a beautiful, slightly intimidating quote who said that love will shatter your dreams and lay you waste like the north wind lays waste to the garden.
I'll be honest, that does not sound like a comfortable, cozy experience. Shattering dreams and laying waste to a garden.
It's not supposed to be comfortable, and that's exactly the point. Letting the true, raw beauty of life understand it requires us to be incredibly bold. By pausing our scrolling and actively practicing acceptance, we allow the wild back into our souls.
We stop being so tame.
Right. We become what the text calls inner warriors, people who can actually handle the intense beauty and unpredictability of life without constantly reaching for a numbing agent or a distraction.
So how do we actually practice this today? The framework offers a very practical, immediate challenge for you listening right now. Look at your day through the lens of acceptance. Try simply allowing the minor things you normally resist.
Start small.
Yeah. When a slow car pulls out in front of you when you're already 5 minutes late, or when there's a sudden rain shower at the exact wrong moment, or when you have to interact with a deeply irritating coworker, just try allowing it. Don't fight the reality of it. Feel the physical sensation of frustration spike in your body and just surround the moment with allowing.
Because the ultimate question is, where is all this daily practice leading us? If we spend our lives practicing allowing the slow cars and the rain showers, where is this taking humanity?
Right, the bigger picture.
And this is where the text makes a major shift. It moves from the personal, micro-level daily practice to a macro-evolutionary end goal. It describes the leap from the 25th gift of acceptance to what it calls the 25th siddhi, or siddhi, the ultimate state of universal love.
Okay, let's explore that leap. Because we throw the word love around all the time, I love my spouse, I love my dog, I love pizza. What does this framework mean by universal love?
Most of us think of love strictly in the personal dimension. It's a localized connection that bridges the distance between two people, or between a person and an object.
Sure.
But universal love, according to this philosophy, operates in an entirely different dimensional field. It is the underlying connective tissue that holds literally everything in the cosmos together. The text notes that this is why humanity has often historically called it God.
Oh, wow.
It's not just anthropomorphizing a feeling, it is describing a fundamental unifying quality of existence.
So if I'm tracking this, personal love is like a flashlight. You aim it at one specific person or one specific thing in the dark to light them up. But universal love is like the sun.
Oh, I like that.
It's just the constant background radiation of the entire solar system. It illuminates absolutely everything equally. You can't say the sun loves one tree more than another because it is simply radiating energy universally.
That is a phenomenal way to understand the distinction. And the text emphasizes that achieving this state, tapping into that solar radiation, requires what it calls a feminine approach.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean gender. It means the energetic quality of receptivity.
So you can't force it.
Exactly. You cannot will your heart to open that wide.
Right.
You can't force your way into universal love through sheer effort. It is an act of pure surrender. You just have to bow to life.
Which leads to maybe the most mind-blowing physical anecdote in this entire stack of research. The speaker talks about the classic prayer posture, being on your knees with your hands clasped together, or the Muslim version of complete physical collapse to the floor.
Yes, the physical surrender.
The text points out that this classic prayer position is actually the only position a human body can remain upright in when completely unconscious.
When you think about the physics of that, it's an incredible realization. Gravity itself holds you securely in that posture.
It's wild.
The text theorizes that these prayer postures weren't just invented by religious institutions. They were likely discovered by early ecstatics and mystics who completely surrendered all trace of their ego. They let go so entirely that they lost consciousness, and they were literally held up by the physics of the earth in a state of total surrender.
And then later on, followers simply copied the physical posture without necessarily understanding the total ego death that created it.
Wait, is that actually physically true? Gravity literally holds an unconscious body in a kneeling bow.
Structurally, yes. If your center of gravity is low enough and your head is bowed forward over your knees, the body naturally locks into a stable tripod. You won't tip over. It is the physical embodiment of complete yielding. It's just phenomenal to picture that. Your ego totally shuts down, you surrender completely, and the actual physics of the earth catches you. And the text suggests that this capacity for universal love isn't something we have to go out and learn from a guru. It claims it is encoded holographically in our DNA.
Yes, and again, viewing this through that philosophical lens, the argument is that within the infinitesimal folds of our physical genetics lies the entire history of our species as a holographic memory, as well as the seed of what we could one day become.
So it's already in us.
Exactly. We aren't trying to invent universal love. We are simply waiting for our consciousness to unlock that ancestral memory.
And unlocking it has massive, world-altering implications for humanity as a whole. The text explains that this 25th gene key is part of a larger genetic grouping called the Ring of Humanity, and its ultimate evolutionary role is the healing of a very specific collective wound, the human wound of shame.
Right.
It references the ancient story of Adam and Eve in the garden, covering themselves up with fig leaves because they suddenly believed they were deeply inherently unworthy.
And according to this framework, we have built our entire modern global civilization around that deep-seated cellular feeling of unworthiness. The text argues that the primary manifestation of this unworthiness is greed and selfishness.
Because we feel empty.
Right. Because we feel an empty void of shame inside, we constantly try to fill it by acquiring money, status, and material goods.
But the text makes a staggering prediction for the future of our species. It says that as we heal this sacred wound through the daily practice of acceptance, we naturally move toward a world where that unworthiness, and therefore the greed it produces, simply evaporates.
It's a profound shift.
The text says this ultimate state sees a world without money. It sees a world where giving is the only currency, where our highest human purpose is simply to serve the whole through philanthropy.
It's a breathtaking vision of the future. Whether you think a literal moneyless society is hundreds of years away or just a utopian metaphor, the underlying message is clear. It describes a completely different kind of human being, one that knows it is universally connected, moving entirely away from the frantic, personal dimension of acquiring things just to protect the eye.
Okay, let's step back and look at the massive journey we've just taken. We all start with this innate cellular constriction of anxiety, that sacred wound that wakes up the moment we realize we are separate from the world.
Yes.
But instead of trying to outthink it with the mad factory manager of our mind, or resigning to it and sinking to the bottom of the freezing ocean, we can use our physical body as an anchor. We can allow the physical sensation, accept the emotional chemistry, and embrace the reality.
The 3 steps.
Exactly. By doing that, we engage in a deeply personal alchemy that, according to this philosophy, will eventually shift our entire species away from shame and greed and toward a universal, sun-like love where giving is the literal currency of the world.
It's a powerful reminder that spiritual evolution isn't happening somewhere out in the clouds or in a textbook. It's happening right now in your nervous system.
Exactly. So for you listening, the relevance of this is immediate. The next time someone aggressively cuts you off in traffic, or you feel a sudden, inexplicable spike of anxiety while sitting at your desk, you don't need to overthink it or try to psychoanalyze your entire childhood right there in the moment.
No need for the factory manager.
Right. You just need to drop into your physical body, feel the steering wheel under your hands, feel your feet flat on the floor, allow the discomfort to exist, and just breathe.
And as you do, consider this final thought to mull over. The text mentioned earlier that we take roughly 17,000 breaths every single day, and we are completely oblivious to almost all of them. Think about the sheer scale of that.
It's a lot of breaths.
It is. That means you have 17,000 hidden built-in opportunities every single day to either unconsciously tighten your inner constriction or consciously inhale universal love. The physical mechanism for your own evolution is literally right under your nose. Which breath will you notice today?